Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. We're doing our last episode of our look at roster evaluations. The cornerback group is on the clock today. Keith, welcome in. How you doing?
Yeah, this is a large position group. A lot of names to talk about here, and interestingly, like there's more names, like good names here than there is for spots on the roster. Honestly,
yeah.
There's some good players that aren't going to make this roster.
I think by the time it's all said and done, this is probably going to be the most competitive position group in training camp, top to bottom. I mean, we kind of know who the top five are going into camp, but you're right. That leaves our 2 draft picks out of the equation and all the undrafted guys we've got on the back end that are competing. And we can kind of run through them individually as we kind of go through this, and maybe we can put together our top 5 or 6 as we head into camp. So I think, in fairness to Tariq Woolen, let's talk about Woolen first before we get to the real cream of the crop. Tariq came in 2022 and just kind of, it was one of those picks, Keith, I remember distinctly going through the draft process with you, and both of us were like on this guy from day one.
We both wanted him.
Early February, and he was like earmarked to be the perfect cornerback in Pete Carroll's defense, and really just kind of worked out that we got him, because I think we mocked him like 15 times each throughout that process, and for good reason.
Fast.
The guy shows up to the combine and just blows it up. Around that 4.27 40 at 6'4", 205 pounds. Didn't have a lot of experience in college.
Played for a tiny school.
And played okay, right? But he just oozed Pete Carroll corner. And you just knew that if he could get into this defense, he would be a star. And sure enough, that first year, I think, he have 6 or 7 interceptions. He was he had the makeup speed for days. He could play on a ball that he was clearly beat on and come around and swipe it out of the air, and just really had an amazing year. Passer rating allowed of 71.1 in 2022, 6 interceptions. In 23, things kind of got complicated for him. So we drafted Witherspoon, and it was going to be the perfect complementary corner for him. And along with the guys that we already had, Jackson and Brown, it was going to be a great room. And Tariq got injured in training camp, and then really never completely looked like he was the same player, probably through at least 12 weeks of the season. Just kind of playing out of sync, never really kind of got into and nobody did really, but I'm not just going to put this on Woolen, but him in particular just looked out of sync, not playing up to the levels that he had played at in his rookie season, lost some confidence, looked like he maybe lost a step, was tentative on making hits and contact, wrapping up and tackling, and just really had 20% missed tackle rate, which is just horrible. 13 missed tackles on the season. And just gave like a C effort. Now, if you go look at the advanced stats, the coverage wise, I think he was still pretty decent, but not living up to the expectation that we had for him was kind of tough. So what did you think of Tariq Woolen, and what do you think he's capable of this season?
Well, I went back and looked at some of the stuff again, and it was a shoulder injury that he got in the preseason that kept him out. And I don't know if it hurt or it just affected him mentally, but he was not looking for contact the way he was the year before. And so he was going about playing with the idea that he was trying to avoid contact, which is why he struggled, because he couldn't come up and make plays against the run. He wasn't effective. He wasn't a guy that they could depend on the outside for that kind of stuff. And that was a problem because that's not who he was as a rookie. As a rookie, he was a very physical player. He used that size to, just bully people and intimidate. Yeah. And he didn't last year. And I think I do think it's a factor of that injury. Now it's been another year, and hopefully he's figured it out and been better. You listen to the coaches talk, and they talk about him, basically saying they have really high expectations for him. They need him to be more physical than last year, but other than that, he's good. He's gonna be fine. So I expect him kind of to get back to where he was as a rookie, where he's seen more, he knows more, he should be able to make fewer mistakes, but he's still got that size, he's still got that length, he's still got that speed. If he gets back to playing physical football, he'll be back to being a Pro Bowler like he was as a rookie.
We did a show with Dan Viennes last week on his show, and one of the questions posed was, who are two of the players on defense that would benefit the most from Mike McDonald's scheme? And his name came up. Mm-hmm. Couple, maybe for all three of us as a player. He was on my list. Benefit the most. Why is that?
Because a guy with not a lot of experience has to have the game controlled for them. Put them in a spot to be successful. Don't ask them to do too much, those kind of things. Clint Hurt did a great job of putting people in all sorts of spots that they weren't going to be successful in, and didn't seem to have the knack for putting guys in a situation where they can be successful. McDonald's going to do a better job of that. He will. Just by the nature of not being terrible at it. It would be better, but he's actually really good at it. So I think that you're going to see scheme stuff built around everybody's strengths. And Woolen's got some amazing strengths, and they're going to play to it. And that's why I think he's going to be a huge beneficiary. Plus, with the way he teaches, where he wants everyone to know what other people's responsibilities are too, not just their own. He's going to know, okay, when can I get away with, trying to undercut a ball for an interception, and when do I have to give space? Because he knows where his free safety is, right? So he knows when he has protection and when he doesn't. And I just think it'll lead to better decision making.
I mean, those are great points. All of that, really. And I think just getting out of his head from last season, fresh start, new coaching regime, some of the antagonizers that he was playing with, Quandre Diggs comes to mind, are no longer on the team to kind of distract him. I thought that he was a little distracted by some of that. And I think that really, if you really think about it, it's a very competitive situation. There was a lot of chatter in the offseason about maybe flipping Woolen for a pick. I didn't agree with it, but there was some chatter. And all of that is now gone, and he's just able to focus on football. This new staff, I'm sure, has got all those guys just really kind of focused and tuned in. Sounds like they had a great mandatory minicamp here this last week, first couple of days, where they were just intercepting balls and all over the receivers and making life really hectic for the quarterbacks. I have a lot of high expectations for him. Now, you pair him with the other two or three starters that we've got on this defense, and you add to the fact that we're going to have a better defensive line, which is really kind of works in tandem with the back end. Sky's the limit for this group, really.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, with Witherspoon being the guy on the opposite side, and he has, he's got potential all-pro written on him, and we saw it last year. In a year when nobody on defense lived up to any kind of potential, he still was a Pro Bowler and very, very good. Now you're going to see him, with another year experience and with people, a better scheme and people around him playing better, he's going to explode. And so if Woolen does his job, which I suspect he will, I'm not really concerned about him. And then you got Witherspoon on the other side. Witherspoon also slides into the nickel when they bring in a third cornerback to allow either Trey Brown or Mike Jackson to play that outside spot. That combination, like they're 4 deep. That's in good with guys that are good, but and 2 of them are Pro Bowl like caliber talent. I love this room. I think this room's great, and we didn't even talk about the 2 draft picks, even in that list. There's other guys here that we still haven't gotten to.
Burns played really well last year, I thought, out of the slot, filling in at times. And Witherspoon, I think you sold him slightly short in that he's not just a Pro Bowler, he's an All-Pro. He's going to be an All-Pro, especially in this defense. So let's talk about Witherspoon for a second. So here's a kid, comes in fifth pick overall, and lived up to all the expectations. So, I mean, he was all over the place, had 79 combined tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. He was kind of a great little blitzer, had 10 quarterback pressures in addition to the sacks. I see him being used in the same way in this scheme, only probably more so, more disguises, more flying around, and just having him have an opportunity to kind of be the athlete on defense, really. And he's gonna play some boundary stuff. He's gonna play some slot. He's gonna play some probably back end stuff. He's gonna be in the box. They'll just have him kind of moving all over the place. And so teams can't really identify where he's going to come from, who he's going to cover, when he's going to be blitzing, when he's going to drop back. I'm just so looking forward to watching him in this scheme, because I think it just totally maximizes a guy like this as far as his skill set. And you mentioned putting people in place to be successful. I mean, it's hard not to have a place for him where he's not going to be successful, because he's just so good, instinctual, like football, jumping, routes, all that kind of stuff.
They can do so much with him. They really can. Like he's a weapon defensively, and they can line him up in a bunch of different places and do a bunch of different things with them. And opposing teams they're not going to know, coming out of the huddle where he's going to be lined up. And then when they do find him, they're not going to know what his responsibilities are based on where he's lined up. I mean, that's kind of the nature of McDonald's defensive scheme, where everything is disguised and a lot of pieces are interchangeable for that reason. And then you have that with his talent and skill. He's going to, I was going to say all pro, but then it's hard to be an all pro.
You have to be, but he is,
you have to be the top. You have to be the top 2 in the top 2 cornerbacks. In the entire NFL. And there's some good ones out there, and it's also a voting process, and not all, the best guy doesn't always get it and that kind of stuff. So, I didn't want to go that far, but yeah, he's the cream of the crop. At corner. And we saw that last year. This kid can flat out play.
So, okay. So after those 2, Michael Jackson and Trey Brown are the next guys up. Those are backup number 1, backup number 2. I thought both of them played very well last year, given the circumstances. Probably more so down the stretch, even though we lost more games down the stretch, and just missed the playoffs with 9 wins. I thought those guys played well. Michael Jackson was targeted 32 times in coverage, only allowed, it didn't allow a single touchdown, had 4 pass breakups, 5 tackles, really steady for the most part. And then Trey Brown had a couple of interceptions, one's returns for a touchdown, forced a couple of fumbles. He's always been kind of a ball hawk, kind of a turnover, kind of generating guy, very aggressive player, going to fit perfectly in this scheme. I think Michael Jackson also has some unique attributes as well. Doesn't have the speed that Woolen has, but he has the size and he has kind of that physical mentality.
He's huge. He's really physical. He's one of the best tackling corners that you're going to see, which on a team that missed a ton of tackles last year, you're going to need guys like that. I thought that when the one game when they benched Woolen and played Jackson in that spot, you could see the difference, not in coverage, because Woolen's a better cover guy, but just his ability to come up, fill lanes, and make tackles against the run was evident. And I really felt like they should have played him more, find other ways to get him on the field. Not that Artie Burns didn't play well, because he did, but just the physicality that Jackson brings, I really like. And McDonald talks about wanting to be physical, wanting to be, the bully out there. And Jackson's the type of guy that helps you get there as far as like a team mentality.
So there's 2 players in that corner room that we've talked about so far that are somewhat limited in their skill sets, in that both Woolen and Jackson are bigger, stronger corners that don't have the agility. Now, Woolen's got the straight line speed, no question, and the makeup speed, but you're not going to play him in the slot typically. Yeah. Michael Jackson, same. He's going to be kind of an outside boundary guy. Yep. So how does that play into the scheme that they want to run, where they want to be multiple, they want to disguise, they want to move guys around? Are these guys going to be asked to play out of position at times?
I think with what you're going to see is, are they going to be asked to play out of position? Well, how do you define the position? They're going to do things where they look more like a safety at times, where they're dropping into a zone, but they did that. And in Pete Carroll's defense, they were in charge of a third of the field in that big cover 3. You're going to see when they play cover 2, they're going to be in charge of the flat, and they're going to do that kind of stuff. I think that you're going to be able to do stuff with them that isn't, it's limited. We can't do, we can't do what we want to do because these guys are too limited. They have skill sets that you can use in different ways. You're going to see them in press coverage and man coverage. You're going to see them in different zones, things that they can do well. And so there will be some disguising, some moving people around. So if they want to really mix things up and you need Mike Jackson to play the slot, well, you just you basically have zone coverage in the middle, and you drop a middle linebacker, and you drop him in. They're both taking, the zones in there and work it that way. I mean, it's the hook zones and that kind of stuff. He can play that. He's not going to match up man coverage and stay with the most, the elite short area quickness guys in the NFL. He's not that kind of guy, but that doesn't mean you can't use him there. You just have to use him smartly. And that's one of the things that I think McDonald does that Clint Hurt didn't, was he can use guys smartly. And I'm not that worried about it.
So one of the things that kind of plays into what you're saying about playing smart is also maybe keeping the penalties down a little bit. So both Tariq Woolen and Trey Brown both had 9 penalties each last season, as far as pass interference, illegal contact, etc. So how do you play these guys a little bit more clean? How do they stay clean? I know that you had a vocal issue, especially right after the draft, with Trey Brown and his history of collecting penalties in college because of the style of play. I don't necessarily think that he reverted last year, but he did have some infractions that were kind of
Yeah, no,
significant.
what the penalties that he got last year were different than the ones he got in college. The ones he got in college where he was just super handsy. Every play he was grabbing and pushing and doing things that get flags in the NFL in college. And he really cleaned that up like his first year and then before he got hurt and, that kind of stuff. But he was it was like he was arriving early on a lot of pass breakups and he kept making contact with guys before the ball got there or grabbing on and holding in times when he didn't need to, and getting penalized that way. I think for him, it's just a matter of he just needs to clean up, his technique a little bit and be more disciplined, and he'll be fine. And I'm hoping that, playing on a defense that isn't where guys are actually doing their job rather than freelancing everywhere, because they don't, trust each other and they don't believe in the scheme, which is kind of what was happening last year. I expect that kind of stuff to get cleaned up by him. He's a good player. He has shown at times, that he can be a very good player, a physical player, but still play clean. Go look at his rookie tape. His rookie tape was nice. And yeah, since then he's had some injuries that he's had to deal with. But his rookie tape was really good.
Well, in addition to being a rookie and being injured too, he kind of missed half the season there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's talk about some bubble players and some players just drafted and kind of figure this back into this roster out. So we kind of know the top four: Woolen, Witherspoon, Jackson, Brown, presumably. And then after that, it gets kind of wishy-washy. Now, Artie Burns is back again, 29 years old, 6 foot, 187. He played almost exclusively in the slot nickel spot last year. Played in 13 games, which was a lot more than he played the previous couple seasons. 23 total tackles, 2 passes defended. Played pretty well, as you said. Nothing special about that, but also limited opportunities. Did play every game, but he was kind of in for substitution purposes and so forth. So, okay, so you've got Artie Burns, and then you've got a couple of draft picks. Nehemiah Pritchett, the 5th round pick, 6 foot, 183 pound, ran a 4.3, 640, 149 split, which is elite with a 34.5 inch vertical at that size is pretty darn decent and kind of a fluid athletic kind of corner. And then DJ James, same college, and 6 foot, 175, ran a 4.4, 240, 1.50 split. Both have their strengths and weaknesses. Both seemingly should be on the roster, but DJ James was drafted a round later. And then you've got some undrafted free agents that have been kicking around the roster for a while, plus a couple others that I really like that we signed this offseason. So talk to me about that 5th, potentially 6th roster spot for corner.
I think they keep 6. I think that's, but the safety room is not deep, as we saw in our last show. There's like 4 guys and there's really not that 5th that you're going to want to keep. So that frees you up to keep another, maybe another corner, I think. So I think they keep 6. And, I look at this and I go, okay, but really you nailed it with there's 3 guys, with Artie Burns and the 2 draft picks, and they're going to keep 2 of them unless they make a move. And that's really what it comes down to. I think there's too many players for the roster. I think if guys come into camp and guys are healthy through, because, if somebody gets hurt, well, that makes these decisions easier because they started the year on IR. But if when the guys are healthy, and they get close to cut down, well, you got 7 or 8 guys that you want, and you can only keep 6. You're going to start seeing trades, and a guy like Michael Jackson might be a tradable piece, or maybe they really like the rookies and they say, okay, Tariq Woolen is a tradable piece, and we're going to get a much better draft pick. I don't think they do that. I think that it's going to be either Jackson or Brown, because both of them are in the last year of their deal. And so you let one of those 2 guys go a year early, get a draft pick for them, and plan on playing the kids a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, even then you're still making decisions, right? You're still looking at, because we haven't mentioned in this, Kobe Bryant, who's a corner and safety, and that versatility is nice, but he hasn't been great at either of them. He wasn't really that good at
he's
safety.
Definitely a roster bubble kind of player this season. Yeah.
And so that gives you now 9
but
guys.
Jarek Reed might not be available at the beginning of the season. So there is some room there.
Yeah. So you look at there's moving parts and there will be injuries between now and roster cut downs. We got to see how that falls and plays out. But this team is, they're stacked. They're going to be able to make these decisions in a way that makes a lot of sense.
I'm just not sure. I completely agree with you in that we have tradable assets. Now, it's entirely possible that happens. And often you see draft picks getting flipped at the end of training camp for a conditional 7th round pick and so forth. And I think that's maybe what we'd be looking at.
No, you can see
potentially 5th round with Michael Jackson, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think we overvalue our own players a little bit.
We're not talking about 1st or 2nd or 3rd round picks. I'm thinking like Trey Brown, you might be able to get a 4th. Mike Jackson, you'd get a 5th. Artie Burns, you'd get a 7th.
Tariq Woolen may fetch a 3rd, but I wouldn't trade Tariq.
No,
not with this new scheme. Not in this situation.
He was a Pro Bowler as a rookie.
Yeah, you got to kind of let it play out a little bit with him, I think.
Yeah, trading him now would be the epitome of selling low. And
short-sighted.
Yeah, and so you want to buy low and sell high, right? So I think you just have to kind of just watch how this whole thing plays out. I'm more concerned with the idea that I am not convinced about the 2 draft picks. I need to see them on the field.
I'm not either, and I honestly kind of question why. Why did we pick 2? Would you pick one of them, and we could have gone in another direction at that point? I thought.
Yeah. So when the Seahawks picked Kobe Bryant, this is a guy that won a whole bunch of awards, as the nation's top cornerback and that kind of stuff, and he won a lot of awards. But why did he drop into the 4th round? Because there were questions on whether or not his game translated from college to the pros. He was a really good college cornerback, but he's been mediocre at best as a pro quarterback because of his physical traits. He had already kind of maxed out what he was going to be. And I get the feeling of that, not with Pritchard, but with the other one, the 6th round pick.
DJ James.
Yeah, DJ James. I get Kobe Bryant vibes from him hard. I saw some big boards and stuff.
Potentially a top 100 pick.
Where people were mocking him in the 3rd round and that kind of stuff. And it felt Kobe Bryant-ish, like a guy that, he was a good college cornerback, but doesn't project as a good pro. And so I'm not sold on
the kid's him. Legit like 173 too.
Yeah,
it's not like this guy is 185 and can maybe add 5 pounds. This guy's 173 and soaking wet. On a great day, he could probably touch 178 by the end of training camp or something. And
he's tiny. He's so skinny.
He's a small guy, but at the same time, he does have those closing skills and the ball skills, which you can't teach. So he's got those things that we like, that we hate when we don't have them. But just where do you fit this guy on the roster? It's like, and would he get picked off if you cut him? I'm not so sure. I think that maybe you can sneak a guy like this onto the practice squad, at least initially, and kind of play it by ear after that.
He dropped all the way to the 6th round. Every team had multiple shots.
In a draft that was really poor as far as depth.
Yeah.
After the 5th round.
Once you get down in the late 5th round, the quality of player dropped off quickly. A lot of guys that would normally have been drafted in the 6th, 7th round weren't there this year because of extra years of eligibility. And so a lot of guys that were taken in the 6th rounds were undrafted free agents in most drafts. And he was taken in the 6th round. So I could see him sliding through.
He still has the ball skills. He still's got the speed, the 4.42. I want to see him. I want to hear about him in practice. I want to, kind of check it out for my own eyes and see what we've got there, because maybe there's something there. Maybe he ends up being better than Pritchett. We just don't know. And that's why they drafted both of them.
Well, Pritchard's got the better numbers in terms of physical skills. Doesn't have you look at the tape and he has to use his recovery speed more because of extra steps here and there. He's got some technique stuff that needs cleaned up, but his physical skills, his talents project better at the NFL level. And that's why he went before the other guy. And so I think that, Pritchard is a guy that you can bring along slowly because you've got a deep room and develop to maybe replace Brown or Jackson next year, who are both in the final year of their contract. I don't know. I need to be sold on both of those guys, but definitely DJ, because I have a hard time.
Well, and it's hard too, because here's a guy that's projected to go maybe in the top 100 in DJ James. We haven't heard a word about him since the draft, really. There's been no write-ups. There's no word out of mini camps that he was having great plays or flash in the mini camp, mandatory mini camp. There's just really no news, nothing about them. Now, granted, they're probably getting third string reps and so forth, so they're not going to get a lot of opportunities. But you kind of want those guys to flash a little bit, pop. We'll see when training camp really starts, where these guys are at in this defense, what the defensive coaches think about these guys, and see what kind of opportunities there are. A couple guys that have been hanging around for an off season is Lance Boykin and Andrew Whitaker. Now, Boykin is an undrafted guy in 2023, 32 and 3/8 inch arms. He's kind of a team captain guy, good size, length, speed, all that kind of stuff. Just didn't get a chance to really show last year, but they invited him back on a futures contract. They're going to have another look, new regime, brand new opportunity for the kid. We'll see what happens. Andrew Whitaker, 6'1", 195. I really like this kid a little bit as far as the size, the 4.3 speed, but he had a knee injury last year in the mock scrimmage and was done. Patellar tendon surgery. Not good.
That's a bad injury.
Bad injury for a corner, for sure.
It's a bad injury for anybody.
And it's going to be a year by the time he comes back. So we're going to see, if he's going to be available or not. They gave him a futures contract as well. They thought highly enough of him to bring him back.
Honestly, both of those guys, even though they were undrafted, their combination of just height, weight, speed, there's physical tools to work with. It's a matter of, can you develop it? And the reason why both those guys are sticking around is because while you're developing it, they can do special teams things for you and do them really, really well.
Right.
And ultimately,
there's just no room on the roster.
Yeah. Ultimately with this group, the first 4 or 5 guys the spots are spoken for. After that, it's what can you do for us on special teams? And I think that's actually where Artie Burns runs into a problem. It's because he doesn't play a lot of special teams because he's 29. And you're going to see the younger guys get opportunities to do there. DJ James at 173 pounds, you don't want out there taking those hits on special teams because he'll get hurt. And I think that works against him. So
Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a shadow roster situation at play here, and practice squad kind of guys, because really you take a look at it, you're going to have 6 at most corners on this roster. One of those draft picks is assuredly going to be there, Artie Burns. So that's it, really. Woolen, Witherspoon, Jackson, Brown, Burns, Pritchett. That's probably my starting or my 9 guys right now, depending on what happens in training camp. DJ James obviously has got a chance, and we'll see. Now, with that said, there's a couple of other undrafted rookie free agents, and I really like one of them. And he's got the physical freak athleticism that I always find in the draft very intriguing, because you've had some success with that in the past. Last person was Tariq Woolen. Now, Ro Torrance doesn't have that sort of that speed, but he's 6'3", 208 pounds, went to Arizona State. I watched him play in person. Very imposing physical kind of guy, but he runs a 4.70 40. Now he might be able to, bring that into the 4.6 range. I'm not sure, but super long, 6'3", like I said, 34 1/8 inch arms. He's a pterodactyl. He's just going to be like, good range, long limbs, impressive physicality. You almost wonder if the guy was going to be switched to a strong safety.
Yeah. Why? He's a guy that I think would do well at strong. And actually, I've thought about Mike Jackson as a strong safety quite a bit, because just
same sort
his
of thing.
size, and he plays so physical, and he's such a good tackler that it just kind of makes a lot of sense. I mean, you don't want to. Cornerbacks are a lot harder to find than strong safeties, and so when you got a guy that can play corner and do it well, why would you move him?
And this guy plays so well in the box. I mean, he just really does. He's kind of a jack of all trades, kind of a corner. You can play him on the boundary, but he's not going to have makeup speed. I mean, you're really going to have to he's going to be kind of a press physical guy that limits your ability to get off the line of scrimmage if you're a wide receiver. But after that, man, it's pretty sketch. But if this guy kind of switches positions, plays more in the box, is a strong safety, covers linebacker or covers tight ends and running backs out of the backfield, kind of a thing, might be his way onto an NFL roster at some point. Obviously, this year, not going to happen. But if they like him enough in camp, you put a guy like that on the practice squad, and eventually maybe he works his way up.
Yeah. I was surprised at the 4.7, because his tape did not look, his tape,
he was a draftable prospect. He really was.
You could tell from his tape that he wasn't the fastest guy, but Mike Jackson isn't the fastest guy. And his combination of just general skill and physicality and length allow him to be a good corner. And I thought Ro Torrance was in that same boat, and then 4.7 was like worse than I expected.
Pushed him out of the draft, really.
Yeah.
That's what pushed him out of the draft.
Because if he had come in and run like a 4.58, he gets drafted in probably the 5th round. Like before DJ James.
Yeah, because he's got a skill set that translates to the NFL, whether it's a position change or not.
Yeah.
Now, the other guy that we picked up in undrafted rookie free agent signing would be Carlton Johnson, Fresno State, 5'11", 173 again, 30 and 3/8 inch arms. So he's just a very small guy, 4.28 40. So there it is. You run a 4.28 40, you're going to get an invite into a training camp. I mean, that's basically the way it is. Horrible agility testing though. So 3-cone shuttle vertical, all below the 2 percentile. So this guy, I don't even know. So, I mean, if you're not an agility guy at 5'11", 173, but you run a 4.28, you don't really have a job in the NFL. There's no, you're a dude without a position, because you can't cover slot receivers. And so that's it.
Yeah, I think he's here as a potential kickoff returner.
I think he's here to be the first guy cut. when they sign somebody else.
Honestly, I could see that too.
It is what it is. Carlton, I apologize. I'm sure you're a fine human being, but I don't know if you've got the body to do an NFL gig. I really don't.
When they need another linebacker because they're short of hands at middle linebacker because of injuries or whatnot, you got to cut someone to bring someone in.
Right.
And they got a lot of
corner room is loaded. It's just loaded. Yeah. So, okay. So kind of wrap this thing up for me, Keith, and talk to me about the defense as a whole and how everything kind of works together and how you feel about, everything kind of stacking up.
Well, I think I said this during our show with Dan Viens. When we were guests over on his show, I'm usually the curmudgeon of the group. I'm more pessimistic than you specifically, but Dan also. And I'm optimistic about this defense. I like that they're good up front. I like that they have cornerback talent and depth. I think they're good where you need to be good. Is it perfect? No. I think they're going to struggle at middle linebacker.
Linebacker is a real issue right now.
And I think safety depth is a concern. But middle linebacker looks like it's going to be a mess. I wouldn't be surprised to see another move made.
Well, just to remind everybody, Dodson and Baker were signed in free agency. Dodson and Baker are both injured. Baker more so, but Dodson's out. Both are out until at least training camp. That's a quote from Mike McDonald. Mm-hmm. And these guys haven't practiced yet with the team and a new scheme with everyone else around. That's great news for John Radigan and Patrick O'Connell. Those guys have been getting first team reps. Okay. But they also have a combined 25 snaps in the NFL, not 25 games, 25 snaps.
Yep.
Total combined. So that's not a good situation to go into a season with when your big signings, the two of the biggest signings that we had in the offseason haven't practiced yet. And maybe one of them, Jerome Baker, may not be ready by the time training camp rolls around.
And it really makes you think that Tyrese Knight's going to end up playing a lot in that
it does make you think
defense,
doesn't it?
Yeah. I look at that and I'm like, okay. I mean, is that ideal? No, but
if you had Dotson, Radigan, Knight, potentially Drake Thomas, although Drake Thomas has also been out with injuries in the last couple of weeks. I'd be interested to find out where he's at as far as coming along with the defense, because Drake Thomas had some promise as an undrafted guy year prior. And so, but really an unimpressive room overall. Even if Dodson and Baker are full strength, they have certain skill sets and they lack others. Mm-hmm. And probably the weakest overall position group on the defense. But I like your optimism, and I share your optimism because
good where
I see that.
I think it's more important that you're good up front and at corner than linebacker or safety. That's why teams spend more up front and at corner than they do at linebacker and safety, or at least they should. They didn't under Pete Carroll, but Pete Carroll's gone, and now Seattle has transitioned to that. If you're going to have a weak spot on your roster, middle linebackers in a 3-4 is not a bad place to have it. The defense isn't perfect. It's going to give up some yards. It's going to give up some points. It's going to do those things, but it has a chance to be so much better than last year because they're good where they need to be. And that's going to translate. I really do.
Yeah, I
really think so.
Just scheme alone, you look at scheme and talent. Mm-hmm. I think on paper, we've got really decent talent overall. And then you look at the scheme. For me, heading into 2023 in that offseason with essentially the same personnel at most key positions, save a few different players. But overall, we're kind of bringing back the same sort of thing. I thought that we had enough talent to be close to a top 15 defense. And I said that on the show, in our prediction show. I said the offense is going to be top 10, potentially top 5. I remember thinking that going in last year. And then the defense could be top 15 and we
should
should win a playoff game and we should get further down the road. That's kind of where we were thinking. I had predicted, I think 12 or 13 wins. I mean, I was really optimistic.
Yep.
So it never got to that. The defense completely never matured, never got better throughout the season, just kind of stayed the same, which was awful. But the same players essentially, plus Byron Murphy and the two linebackers and Rashad Jenkins essentially have the potential to be a top 15 defense. Now, is it going to happen overnight? I don't know. We start around 20-ish, but I think we could evolve by the end of the year. We're talking about a defense that comes back in 2025 that could potentially be a top 10 defense. And so that's what I'm saying.
I'm looking at this and the Seahawks were 30th in defense last year, somewhere between 28 and 31, depending on which stats you want to use. They were not 28 to 31 in terms of talent. They were a much more talented defense than what showed up on the field. A lot of that scheme, a lot of that belongs at the feet of Clint Hurt. We've drastically underperformed last year. Better coaching, better scheme, just all around. You're going to get a lot more out of the same talent. And then they added Byron Murphy up front.
Right.
And
I think season of Leonard Williams, a full season of Nwasu.
Yeah. I think you're going to get a lot more out of the same guys. And plus there's been upgrades. So I expect this defense to be significantly better, not just a little bit better.
We're going to have an interesting conversation as September 1st rolls around and we start doing some prediction stuff, because you could really tuck yourself into something special out of this group. Mm-hmm. For me, maybe that something special happens in 2025, and this is kind of a transition year, but we're no longer descending. I think we've reached a level where we're at least now even, and we'll see where the scheme takes us. And then we're ascending, I think, as time evolves here, and especially as the year progresses. I think if this team is showing improvement, like week in, week out, could be something special, really.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. We're done. We're done with all that position group stuff. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. It's been a long series. Are we not going to do specialists? Oh, wait, there's 3 specialists on the roster. All 3 of them will make the roster. There was something the other week when we were on Dan's show. We were talking about how many all pros are blue chip players. And I didn't get to mention the fact that I thought Michael Dixon was a blue chip player. And I kind of felt bad after the show because they never get anything, right? We never talk about them. But if you want to say that, Seattle's got, 5 or 6 blue chip players at most, I think Michael Dixon is definitely one of them. So I thought I'd say that. So you say that, are you saying that Chris Stoll is not a blue chip long snapper?
We never talk about him, so maybe he is. We'd have to kind of go deep to figure that out, I think. I did have on the schedule. I will say this. I did have on Monday's schedule, this next Monday, recording a position group for special teams, which we hadn't done in the past. I put it on the schedule. We could still do that show. We could talk about Jason Myers. We could talk about Dixon. We could talk about Stoll if you want to. Or we'll see. After that, the next show I've got scheduled is the coaches show, where we kind of take a deep dive on coaches. That sounds a little bit more interesting.
Chris Stoll's been on the roster for a year, and I still know nothing about him, other than he was good enough that I didn't know his name, and I had to look it up before I made the comment.
Do you know where he went to college?
Penn State, but only because I'm staring at the roster.
Do you know if he's married?
No.
Is he?
I know nothing else.
I have no idea. I don't,
and that's a good thing. Like we've had some bad experiences with long snappers. Tyler Ott was kind of a nice, hey, he jumped in and
Yes.
took over and was nice, but then he got hurt. And then we had, that was a kind of an issue. They didn't even draft anyone. They didn't sign anyone. They just got Stoll after the draft. Never had him compete with anyone. And we literally didn't talk about him, which is the best thing you can say for a long snapper. Because if someone's bringing up the long snapper and talking about him, it's because they screwed up.
Yes.
And Stoll did.
It's true.
We didn't talk about him, which means he never screwed up. And
well, I think we just pretty much had our special teams position group evaluation right there.
I think we're done with that. Yep.
Yeah, I think so. Because Michael Dixon and Jason Myers, whatever. I mean, Jason Myers to me gets paid a lot, and they could save money if they were to draft a kicker or acquire one from a camp casualty or whatever. But I don't see that happening.
No. He's been good when it matters. He's been good from long range, and I see him sticking around. People seem to think that he's not good, but he did set a team record for consecutive field goals made.
Yeah, no, but there are stretches, there are moments where he's inconsistent for like 3 weeks. And it's like, I don't even know what's going on. And all of a sudden he's back. He's in a groove and that. The one thing that we could talk about, if we were going to talk about Dixon and Myers for a little bit of time, would be to kind of try to figure out this new kickoff situation that everyone's kind of talking about. We haven't really spent much time talking about it as far as the rules. Now, our team's going to acquiesce to other teams the 30-yard line, because if you do a touchback, kick it into the end zone, rolls through the end zone, it's a touchback. It comes out to the 30 this year instead of the 25. And then on kickoffs, they've rigged the rules to where a return is likely and potentially a sizable return. They've got 2 kickoff returners back. You can do some kind of fun stuff with that. You can disguise some things. You can, and the ability to begin your run down to try to tackle these guys is delayed at the line of scrimmage, the kickoff line.
Yeah, but they're not back where the kickoff is done. They're up at the like the 30-yard line. And so you can't move until the ball's caught or touched by the receiver, but you're already up kind of in position. You just happen to have a guy in your face, and you're not moving yet. You're not up to speed, but you're already kind of up in position. And so it's not like they're just sitting back at where the ball is being kicked on the opposite side of midfield. They're right there. Their ball's going to be dropping, 20 yards in front of them.
No, that can't be, because then you could do an onside kick relatively easy.
Nope. That is what the rule is. Go look at the go look at what the XFL did last year, because that's where the rule came from. And that's what they have. They have guys, all of the coverage guys and all of the non-returners on the returning team, all the blockers, are lined up a yard between each other at the 30-yard line.
So maybe we should have a show so we could talk about.
Maybe we should have a show about this.
Yeah, right. Some of the other things coming up, we're going to do a coaches show. We're going to look at the NFC West and the NFC as a whole to kind of find out where Seattle sits in that bucket. We're going to do our 8th annual beer show with question and answers. We plan on recording that on July 1st. Another big show coming up is biggest question marks remaining. We're going to do a training camp preview as we get closer, both on offense and defense. We're going to have training camp updates. We just got an invite to appear on another podcast in my inbox. And so we'll have some information on that coming up as soon as that gets confirmed. And so a lot of fun stuff going on. We should probably have a guest or two, maybe this off season a little bit. I know I'm going to be gone for the first 2 games of the season. I'm going to be out of the country, and so Keith's going to have a guest on to cover that time frame. So
yep, Bill's leaving me in charge, and we will make him regret that. I'm sure. Let's join me for the chaos of shows without Bill. That will be fun.
That will be fun, actually.
Are you gonna make me bring Dana Orgoman on as my guest just to keep me in line?
You probably should, Keith. You probably should. Yes, for sure. And also, yeah, I'm going to be listening to these for sure. Like wherever I'm at, I'll listen in. I'll kind of, maybe I'll shoot you a comment on YouTube, like some of your other fans do occasionally.
I don't have fans. I have people that call me idiots, and they're not wrong, but,
all right, let's get out of here. Let's leave it at that. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel, and hit the subscribe button, share it, like it, leave a comment, all that good stuff. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.